A very good evening to one and all present. Thank you so much for joining us today for this special webinar on Is MBA a good decision in these bad times? It is my good fortune today to introduce both of our eminent guest speakers on this session. Firstly, we are joined by Mr. Amit Agnihotri. Mr. Amit Agnihotri is the founder and convener of the Indian Management Conclave and MBAuniverse.com. After earning his PGDM from MBI Gurgaon, Mr. Agnihotri started his corporate career at world's largest advertising network, WPP. Soon after, he turned into a serial entrepreneur. In 2000, he co-founded Exchange Media Group, which owns many media publications in India. In 2008, Mr. Agnihotri founded MBAuniverse.com, an online platform that connects the top 100 Indian business schools with prospective students and other stakeholders. Today, MBAuniverse.com is India's largest and most respectable online portal that has helped more than 1 million students get to their dreams business school in India. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. He's also spoken at various international forums and is a very, very eminent personality in the field of management education. It really is our privilege to have you today on this particular special webinar. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Also, we are joined by another very eminent guest and speaker from the management world, Dr. Atish Chattopadhyay. Dr. Atish Chattopadhyay is the director of IFM Business School in Bangalore, and he's now the vice chancellor of Vijayabhumi University, India's first liberal professional university at Karjat in Greater Bombay. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out time and for joining us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
So first, sir, I'd like to invite reflections from Mr. Amit Agnihotri on this particular topic that, is MBA actually a good decision for fresh graduates in these times that we're entering into, where people are talking today about a global recession and economic recession that we're going to enter into. So would like to invite Mr. Agnihotri to share his perspective with us on this particular topic to start with.
Thank you, Kritika, for the very kind introduction, and thank you to Vijayabhumi and IFIM Business School for inviting me. It's an honor to be part of this important initiatives. You're doing great in terms of keeping the engagement alive with the virtual platform. So congratulations to you. I would use a short presentation, if you allow me, over the next 8 to 10 minutes. To just set the context, and then we can go into hearing Dr. Atish and then get into a Q&A. Is that okay? Shall I start a short presentation?
Absolutely. Please go ahead.
Absolutely, sir.
Thank you. So I have titled a short presentation on the theme of the webinar. I hope I'm audible, clearly audible.
Absolutely,
It's
sir.
clear.
Thank you. So I pose this question: is MBA admission a good decision in bad times? And if we are reading the newspapers, we are seeing extremely disturbing headlines. IMF predicts a worst slowdown since the Great Depression. We are talking about, IMF is talking about 3% contraction in the global economy. If you look at what some of the very salient voices on macroeconomy like Rubini are saying, they're talking about 10 reasons why a Great Depression for 2020 is inevitable. And he talks about, this is a great article which talks about 10 Ds, including deglobalization, as the impact of what's happening in the COVID-19, post-COVID-19 era. So there is a lot of talk of gloom and doom globally. I'm sure all of us are following that. Not just globally, but in India also, we are anticipating a severe slowdown, if not degrowth. We are almost there. This is Moody's 2 days back talking about the Indian GDP growth rate to be practically 0.2% in 2020, which they've cut down from 2.5%. So practically from we were at about 7 or 8%. we wanted to go to 10%, and now we've crashed to about 0%. So that's how the world has changed in the last 45 odd days, and we are all part of this changing paradigm, locked in our homes and in our respective places. So that's the broad context. And if you see, the life cycle of a recession, this is some research that we were doing, and we found this interesting, data, which says basically that on an average, about 18 months is the life of a recession. And when you talk about a 2-year MBA, it has a connection with that duration. So that's why I thought I'll bring that up. So last few recessions have lasted about 15 to 18 months, and we are about to enter into one very soon, if not already. In this context, you may ask, what is the impact of all this on higher education? What happens? Does higher education slow down? Is there a negative impact on higher education? And how does things shape up from here? Interestingly, higher education is actually a counterintuitive industry. Can you see my entire slide? Or just
no issues, Amit. Please carry on. Everything is visible.
Thank you. So higher education is a counter-cyclical industry. That's the data of a researcher, very prominent researcher at Stanford, Professor Hawksby, who's written a book, very popular book, on how financial crisis and great recessions affect higher education in past. And what she says is very interesting. She says that higher education is actually a counter-cyclical industry, which means that when all the other industries are actually going through a recession, higher education actually sees a growth. And this is what is something which is fantastic about education and higher education and the industry that we are all part of. So just to quickly read what is the conclusion of our study, the evidence shows that students were most likely to enroll in a college and were most likely to stay in a college during the Great Recession. This may seem surprising, but actually college going has increased in every recession since the 1960s. In short, even though families may find it more painful to pay for college during a recession because their incomes and home values are stagnant or falling, they do pay for college. This is the sense in which higher education is a counter-cyclical industry. So I thought this is a very, very interesting, very, very important cornerstone of our discussion today, that while everything else is changing around us, higher education is one anchor, and where the importance actually amplifies as we go into periods of economic recession and periods of slowdown. Now, with this context, as we move on, there is more evidence on the same idea that higher education is actually counter-cyclical. According to GMAT, the body that does the GMAT exam, in 2009, more than 2/3 of full-time MBA program actually received more application than they did in the previous year. 2008-9 was the financial meltdown, the recession that was driven by financial meltdown. In India too, I've been doing some research, and it looks like that in 2008 and 9, good programs actually saw an increase. So there is a lot of data from West and anecdotal data from India. I could not find a research that looks at numbers and has formal research, but anecdotal evidence suggests that in India also higher education is actually a counter-cyclical industry. Now, one important element of higher education trends in the last decade has been the rise of study abroad. We all know the numbers, that the increase of people who are going abroad is rising at a very, very fast pace. What does the current scenario do? So my question is to the students, do you actually want to go to a Zoom university? Now, this is a new word that has come about, where basically, all the top universities, including the Harvards and the Whartons, are actually going to be conducting much of their, half year of the coming year, uh, you know, through a combination of virtual classes and in person as and when they're allowed. So this is a snapshot of Wharton, their announcement, very recent announcement on the website called Poets and Quants, which tracks American MBA market like we do in India. Wharton plans blend of in-person virtual class in fall. And this is a headline which is running all across the business schools, all across the leading schools, of the West. So, and of course, this is inevitable. They cannot start, students cannot travel, they cannot come to the campus, so they want to have some engagement. Now, the question is that if you want to pay a very, very high premium fee and still get into a Zoom university where you are doing much of your program, at least the initiation, which is what the fun part is. I always remember the first week of my life in a business school at MDI, which was fascinating. So do you want to miss out that? And a lot of students are actually saying no to travel for a variety of reasons, including this fact that they don't want to get into a Zoom program. If that was the case, they can pay a tenth or even lesser and get into an online MBA. But is online learning the answer? We keep reading a lot of discussion around online and rising importance of online. I had a detailed chat 2 days back with Dr. Shrikant Dattar from the Harvard Business School. Many of you would know him as someone who's done amazing, insightful work in the area of MBA education last decade. Now, Dr. Shrikant Dattar told me, and we will be publishing a very detailed interview on mbauniverse.com very shortly. What he says is, and rightly, is that there are major limitations. There are some limitations of online learning. As we know, there are three critical parts of an MBA education, or for that matter, any education: knowing, doing, being. And I will not go into great detail, but essentially what he articulated in his book, Rethinking the MBA in 2010, is that there are three parts to a business education. One is knowing, which is the theoretical framework. The second is doing, which is the practical application of what you've learned. Are you able to apply? And third is being, which is extremely important, where the whole conversation is around living living a great as a role model. So knowing, doing, being. And if you really look at online learning, it only attempts to do the first point, which is knowing. And it is good at doing that. So there are some strengths of online learning, which is that it allows you, a learner, to know. But what about doing and what about being? And at least 60 or 70% of MBA education is about doing and being, learning from the peers, learning from the network, and so on and so forth. So online learning is not really, in my view, the answer for someone who's really wanting a top class MBA experience or a undergraduate BBA experience. Online education has limitations. And to close, with my perhaps the last slide. So is MBA admission in India a good decision in bad times? I certainly think so. Study abroad is less attractive for health and ROI reasons. We talked about that. New jobs are difficult to come by, particularly for engineering graduates in the current circumstances. We understand that. We all understand that. Layoffs, salary cuts are a common practice. If you're reading newspapers, if you're following news, you know that. All the large companies are announcing that. And actually, this is important, that tough times are good times to study economy and management. So much is happening, and people are not just following what is the grain. They are actually, in tough times, questioning everything. And this is a great time to actually reflect on the fundamentals of business and economy. So MBA in current times is a great idea. MBA in 2020 will make you job ready when the growth is back in 2020, 2022. Remember, I talked about that it takes about 18 months for a crisis to run through. So by the time, if you enroll in 2020, by the time it's 2022, God willing, we'll be in a great economy, in a great shape, and hence this is a great investment to get into a good business undergraduate or postgraduate program. And finally, MBA is actually a lifelong investment, and anybody who's gone through that program will tell you that it's a life-changing experience. A good MBA is a life-changing experience, and so don't waste time. Don't fritter away. Get ready for a future with great education. That's what I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. That was very, very insightful. If I now may request our second eminent speaker on the panel, Dr. Atish Chattopadhyay, to share his views with us on this particular topic. Atish, sir, over to you. Sir, I think you're on mute. Atish, sir, I think you're on mute.
So first of all, thank you, Amit, for making the job very, very easy. Okay. And you can see that when you were speaking, I actually muted myself. Okay. So I think the three important factors that that you talked about is the life cycle of a recession being around 18 months. So this is the right time to start an MBA. So those who got into the peak actually ends up coming out during recession, whereas those who start during a recession comes out during the peak. Okay. So, or during the recovery phase when everybody is probably looking at MBA graduates. That's one. Second is that higher education is counter-cyclical. Okay. And the third issue that you talked about is a very interesting factor. And I like that. Tough times are good time to study economy and management. Okay. And I was looking at some of the questions over here. Okay. Now, my take will be essentially, is a management degree a good investment? My answer is yes. Okay. At any point in time, and particularly at a time when things become challenging, I think this is the best thing to do is to invest in education, and education which enhances one career opportunities, whether it is the undergraduate level or at the graduate level. Okay. The second question that needs to be answered then, if I've decided that, okay, that I would like to go for a management program to upgrade myself and to enhance my career opportunities, then what kind of program should I pursue? Okay. I think there lies some of the challenges. One of the important factor there is, to my mind, is to look at a program which curriculum is relevant to the industry and prepare for the future. I think that is the first part. Second part, a program and an institution where the faculty are imparting that balance of knowing, doing, and being. Okay. And number three, and it is very important, what kind of industry connect is going to happen. I think that is where, the institutions which have taken necessary steps to address these issues will be scoring and creating real value for the participants, whether it is at the undergraduate level or the graduate level. Having been in number of institutions now, Amit, we are probably knowing each other for more than a decade now. Okay, across institutions now. And having seen, you are very correct, 2009 was the one when actually the MBA market started going up. Okay. Now, if we look at it, what is it that the student should look forward to? Is those institutions which are forward looking, understand the industry needs, and can bring in the right kind of curriculum and faculty. And I will just respond to quick three questions. First question is, by I think Sarnika Yadav, okay, that is only rich student do an MBA. My answer is most of the good schools offer scholarships to deserving students, both on merit as well as from merit comes means. And I am aware of the institutions that I have been to, including IFIM Business School. Okay, A meritorious student will never be denied of an MBA because only of the financial consideration. And Amit, I'm happy to share because this question came up. We are, in addition to the merit scholarship that we offer when we started our admission process, whether the people have taken admission or not, we are offering a straight scholarship of 4 lakh rupees to 50 participants based on a test that we are conducting on 15th of May. I think that lowers the cost of education substantially. Okay, that is number one. Second question that came up is, how do you foresee education sector post-COVID? I think 3 things that is going to happen. Number one is that the pedagogy of education is going to be different from the way it was earlier. See, most of the institutions and has covered the knowledge part in education, and the knowledge part today can be delivered through a remote mode. But more importantly, what becomes important is the doing and being part. And you know that I have also very closely worked and interacted with Professor Srikant Datar, whom you mentioned just now. Now, which means what? If we look at what will be happening, what will be the shift happening? See, there are some city schools with very limited campus space, which means essentially these are to impart the knowledge part only. You graduated for MDI and you will probably talk more about the campus life than what you learned inside classroom. And that's where you mentioned the first week of your journey. Correct, Amit? Now, in order to do the doing and being part, the campus and the landscape becomes important. So I think the shift will probably happen, that the knowing part will be just like what Anna said, will be probably delivered more through, online synchronous mode. But the doing and being part, the exploration, reflection, team building, all that will happen in the campus mode. Okay, for that the campus will be essential. Okay, and post-COVID, I foresee, those institutions which has got a campus, not necessarily in the city, but which has got a campus, which can provide that wide, broad angle landscape, okay, and which can facilitate that process of exploration and experimentation in the campus, will be the ones who will be having an edge. Okay, and I was just discussing before we started in our chat. For example, we are now coming up with a second campus at Mumbai. Okay, IFM Business School, which is 270-degree surrounded by hills, and Amit, you must visit it. Okay, and amazing sporting facilities, which is swimming pool, shooting range, tennis, basketball, all kinds, trekking, all that is feasible. It's a 200-acre campus. Okay, out of that 54-acre is already been done. Now that is where I think that context of doing and being will be becoming more and more relevant. As a matter of fact, I am happy to share, because a lot of people have asked what kind of an MBA. We are launching from our second campus an MBA program of IFM Business School, which will be essentially a very different program. You know that we did a study with the industry, with NHRDN, partnering with NHRDN, where we actually studied almost 300 senior executives, understanding the industry needs, and we found that there are some very important needs. One of the need is that a multidisciplinary approach, holistic learning, okay, and a learning orientation. Now the way it is that the doing being will be in that campus context will be creating the doing being part, and based on the industry requirement, the kind of specializations that we are going to offer is very differentiated, which means a specialization in design, communication design, specialization in market regulations and competition law, specializations in digital sales and marketing, fintech. Now these are the areas which are going to be the post-COVID areas. Okay, and if you have an MBA program which creates the multidisciplinary foundation with a very strong professional knowledge of a discipline which is emerging and which is going to be the future. I think those are the kind of programs which are going to make a difference. The MBA program which we are launching from our Bombay campus, I think will be one such program which is very differentiated. I am not aware any of the AACSB accredited institutions in India offering specialization in competition law, market regulations, communication design, fintech, or for that matter, digital sales and marketing. I think those are the post-COVID era kind of programs which is going to come up and which is going to make that impact. That's my take, Kritika. So starting take.
So now I would like to invite, both your reflections on this point. So, India has this bursting number of engineering graduates that we have passing out, on an every year basis. With so many graduates coming out and obviously a scarcity in job opportunities, what do you see? What is the future for these graduates? And also keeping in mind this entire, pandemic situation and the fact that, we might be headed for a global recession. What is your situation? What is the, perspective that you have in mind for fresh graduates who will be graduating this year?
Amit, I give it to you.
Sure. So I will address this in a slightly different way. I will say that we must think, all people who are graduating, who are studying, who are looking for careers, who are looking for higher education, to ask a question. What is the shape of a job of a future? What does the future of job look like? What is the nature of the job 5 years down the line? And the moment you begin to think in that way, 5 or 10 years down the line, you will actually get some very remarkable things that are happening around you. For instance, automation. Any job that can be routinized, any job that can be mechanized, any job which can be put into a formula, after COVID, with COVID, will actually get accelerated in a very, very big way. So all the mundane jobs, their end is very, very near. So you have to really think that what is the job of a future in the context of where we are. All companies will want to cut down in terms of people, resources, to boost up profitability, to remain relevant. If that happens, they're already using, but they will use automation of a very high order in a very, very big way. Companies like TCS have already announced they are not wanting 75% of their workforce to come to office. What does that tell you? It tells you that the job of future and the work of future is going to be very, very different. And there are two cornerstones of the job of future, to my mind. One is immersion in technology. Technology is agnostic. All of you know this. You are technology natives, you are digital natives. But technology is going to be like the blood that runs in a body. Second is that there is going to be a need for a multidisciplinary synthesis across fields. And I think that is one of the highlights of the work that you're doing at Vijay Bhumi University. It is not going to be one area that will help you grow. You will have to synthesize multiple areas to make a really big impact in your professional life. No longer gone are the days when you could sell things the way they are for the next 10 years, 20 years and get into vice president level. Today, to move to the second tier or the third tier, you have to get into innovation, which is where the bedrock is a very holistic outlook. So those are the kind of things that will become very, very important. So if the current generation that is graduating from engineering institutions and graduate schools does not have these skills, it's high time that they get it. They still have a chance right now. COVID-19 is actually a good opportunity. It depends on how you see it. Personally, I've been investing a lot of time over the last 45 days in terms of going beyond the mundane and in terms of looking at various things. And that kind of reflection is very important. Deep work rather than mundane work is going to be the future. I don't know whether I've answered your question, but those are some of the thoughts.
Amit, whatever may be the reason, we resonate with each other. Okay. So when we designed our curriculum, as we said that, the entire curriculum is based on the foundation of the multiple intelligences. Okay. Which means that each of the student actually goes through, courses in the area of all the intelligences that we have, which means, you go through design, you go through law and society, you go through languages, you go through environmental sciences, you go through interpersonal skills, even performing arts, which is very, very important because that's how you communicate. See, and then of course the mathematical part. What traditionally, we have always debated that has happened is that out of the 8 intelligences that an individual have, the mathematical intelligence has always been given a higher degree of weightage in the Indian context. I think we need to change that. So to us, the linguistic guy is as good as a mathematical guy. We don't want to differentiate between a Wordsworth and an Einstein. Okay, because you need that framework where you have a broad understanding of multiple disciplines with a wide angle view. Now, why it is required? The first part is that we are looking, COVID or no COVID, the present generation is looking at 100 years of life, which means 80 years of work. So the nature of job will be changing. And you talked about the future of jobs report. And we did our survey. There were some 10 what you call needs which got identified. The first need which got identified was the learning orientation, learning to learn. You talked about Srikant Datar. When they wrote the book in 2008, they talked about communication, oral and written. Today, we are talking about integration of data, technology, and communication. And multidisciplinary also came out as one of the needs. So each of the students who get into the program today with us will have to take courses across disciplines. Why? Because that allows the process of discovery. That one discovers where they're good at before deciding on which is the path that one has to take. And it also allows that option to change professions as you go forward. Okay. Or to create a combination. Today, I think, Kritika is a lawyer or, and she's an NLU graduate. Now, it is an important part is, today legal profession has to understand data more than anybody else. Now, those kind of programs which integrates both becomes important. The other part, one of the important frameworks that we are using, and this is, you will be happy to know, is what we have termed as an ideas framework in our every course, which is innovation, design thinking, entrepreneurship, automation, and solutioning. Now, each course must look at all these 5 areas in how we are addressing. So automation is here to stay. And you are very correct when you say that human beings will not be required to do the repetitive, routinized jobs. It will be more to do with thinking, more to do with creativity, more to do with solutioning, and not necessarily the routine task the way it was done earlier. I think, and that is where the opportunity comes for the present generation to get into such interesting programs where they can really make a difference. I think that is what the important factor is, that you have to move beyond like what was the past jobs like and look forward to the future of jobs. Very well said, Amit.
Thank you.
So, there's another interesting question that's been coming up during these times. What about the students who are actually keen to pursue a master's degree overseas? Now we know that, with this entire pandemic and with a lot of, countries deciding to close and shut down their borders, obviously that has marred a lot of the plans of a lot of students planning to go and do their masters abroad. So what would your advice be to those kind of students as well?
I will again give it to Amit first.
Thank you, Dr. Atish. See, as I said, great institutions are great institutions. Let's accept that a Harvard or a Booth is what they are. If you have an opportunity in the really top 10 or top 20 business schools or top 15 business schools, I will not go beyond top 20 globally outside India, which would include all the top names. Then you must seriously think, if you do not have an opportunity to study in top 20 business schools, then I will say that in the last 5 years, particularly since we track MBA education in India quite closely, business schools in India have upped the game. Business schools like many IIMs, ISP, and disruptors like IFIM. What they've done is that they have tried to change the paradigm. They have looked at it in terms of creating differentiation, and Dr. Atish can talk a lot more about it. But Indian business schools, essentially, what I want to say is that offer great value for money. In terms of, if you see ROI, you will actually get your monies back in less than 2 years. So if you invest 20 lakh, you have a very good chance, looking at all the MBA data that I know of, that you will actually get a good return within 2 years from your MBA, which I think is a fantastic outcome. And especially in current times where the jobs are not going to be there, I see some comment from Philip Jacob talking about TCS and how it will impact on various sectors. Of course, real estate, auto industry, hotel and leisure industries. The jobs are gone for next 2 years. So you have to think ahead before the snowball hits you, and you have to adapt and change and take the leap before the snowball hits you. So that would be my answer, that if you get into top 10 of the top global schools, think about it. They are giving you a lot of options. If you're not going into top 20, if you're going to any other school just for MBA abroad, actually business schools like IFIM give you, and a lot of other good business schools give you a very good opportunity. And in any case, there are pathways. So you can do first year here, and you can go next year to the offshore campus and so on and so forth. So that will be what I like to say.
See, to me, I think Amit is absolutely okay. Now, the joke normally is, if you don't get into IIT, then only you go to MIT. You don't get into IIM Ahmedabad, XLRI, SPJMRs of the world, then only you go to Wharton and Harvards of the world. Okay. But yes, if you are so keen that you want to study in Harvards of the world and you get there, as he said, the top 20, please go there. That's my first answer. But there is a change post-COVID. Okay. First of all, I am fully with Amit that the Indian institutions offer great value. Okay. And quite a few of them actually go in for our laptop in international locations, and that's the kind of alumni base we have in a lot of international locations. Srikanth Dadar, by the way, is an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. Okay. Now, because he mentioned him. Now, Raghuram Rajan is also IIM Ahmedabad, by the way. So none of them are here. Now, if you want to start your career from day one in an international location, then there are the option of the pathways, which means there are schools, like I can take the example of IFIM because I am aware of, and there are other schools also, 1 or 2, who offers 1 year here and 1 year in a location abroad. Now the advantage, for example, we have got tie-ups with Sydney Business School in University of Wollongong, Australia, and what are called State University of New York. Now, what is the advantage? Advantage is that you do part of the program here, part of the program there. Your cost becomes very, very competitive. The total cost, Amit, comes to 23 lakhs, including the staying cost in US. And then there is a 3 years visa. Now Sani's median salary is 80,000 US dollar, graduating batch, which means that it is actually recovered even less than a year. And there is a 3-year work visa that they get. But one advantage of the program is this. Now, if somebody wants also to be what I call have an Indian degree, when you get a degree from both the Indian institution as well as the US or the Australian institution, well, in Hindi, and you are both from Delhi right now, dono haath mein laddu. So if the US economy is not doing well, you have got your alumni base and you're connecting India to come back. And if you want to be in US or Australia, you want to be there. So pathway programs for those who are very focused, no, I want to work in Australia or US or the Europe, are good options for such. Otherwise, Indian MBA schools are up there. A lot of times I think, even if you go below the top 10 in internationally, Indian schools teaching learning is way ahead. That's my take.
So, so there is another question that I've been noticing in the chat box. A lot of people actually want to know what is the situation of hiring going to be in a lot of, the business schools and universities hereafter. So if I may invite, Dr. Atish's views first, that if you could clear the air about, what are they going to be hiring opportunities, because that is something that really affects students. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
See, I have been in the I was in 2008 recession in one of the top schools of the country, top 5 ranked schools. Okay. And nobody gets to say that it will remain unaffected is something which is a misnomer. And we actually struggled for placement that time. But remember one thing, that the education that is imparted by a good school is carried forever and remains forever. So I'm just taking an example. Say a person was supposed to get into XYZ company, if there would have been no recession, got into a different kind of company, different kind of role, different kind of package. But as the country comes out of the recession, they landed up with the kind of roles that they were looking forward to earlier. So, the first job is never the last job. It is only the starting job. None of us are in the first job, correct? We keep on changing jobs. Okay. Number 2, education is about enablement. Education is about empowering an individual to do things what they want to do. The objective of education cannot be like that of, there was a joke in Singapore that, a lifetime ambition of a woman from Philippines is to become a chambermaid in Singapore. Are we talking about education to create those chambermaids, or are we talking about education for enablement, empowerment to do things what we want to do? I think education empowers, education enables, and there may be a little bit of hitches, but if you are a good school graduate with good education, you can make it yourself. That's my take. Amit, what do you think?
I lost you a little bit, Kritika. Can you repeat the question, please?
Sir, the question is relating to hiring. So, obviously with the kind of situation that we are in right now, people are a little apprehensive about, what is the hiring, what are the hiring opportunities that are going to be available in the various business schools. So I think, Dr. Atish made a beautiful point there, that it's so important for us to dissociate education from hiring. I mean, what one has to look at is the fact that a degree is actually enabling you, and a multitude of opportunities open for a lifetime. So if we may also invite your views on this question.
So I totally agree with Dr. Atish. Your first job is certainly not your last job. Typically, it lasts for about 18 months to 24 months. That's the life cycle of your first job. There will be some impact this year for graduates who are coming out in 2020. But I strongly believe that people will come out in 2022 will be in a great shape, because all these slowdowns and recessions don't last more than about 18 months. And you will be actually graduating in the summer of 2022, where a lot of companies will be putting new capacity and so on and so forth. So should not worry. And the importance of jobs is always overestimated in our cultural context, which is right, because we are coming from, a society where getting a first job or a job is a very, very important thing. To give you a personal anecdote very quickly, I had two jobs when I was graduating from MDI in 1996. One was a job from campus, which was the top bank of the country at that point in time, and they were paying me about 20,000 rupees a month, which was a princely sum in 1996. I took a out of campus placement for 6,000 rupees in a company and an industry of my choice, which was media and advertising. And that was the best decision that I ever took. I took a salary cut of 65%, but I've never been so happy, because I chose to do what I'm very passionate about from day zero. And as with the guidance of God, in about 4 years' time, I was back with my class average. And another 4 or 5 years' time, I was probably top 10 percentile. This is not to boast. This is just to give youngsters an idea about the importance to actually introspect and discover who you are and what is it that you are really made for. I truly believe when God has given a very unique skill to all of us. And if we are able to discover it, forget about how it's valued, you will be a very happy and a very satisfied person. So the purpose of education is also to understand yourself, and my management education really got me to that. 2 years at MDI really made me think that there are plenty of choices, but what is it that I want to do? And I was able to make that choice, and I've never looked back since. Long answer to
I
your
think,
question.
yeah, that's very beautifully put, sir. Thank you so much. Now there is another question that comes to students' mind, that how do you choose, which is like, how do you choose the ideal business school for yourself? Because there's so many options that are available today. So how do you go about making that choice? And I'd invite opinions from the both of you on this particular question.
This is Amit first, because I will be biased. People might think so.
Okay, so I'll take that first. See, making a choice of a business school is, with the amount of information that we have with us, is not such a difficult decision. Of course, you have to look at your capability and your capacity to pay. These are two most important factors where you look for shortlisting a business school. Look for how good you are, and look for how much you can pay, and then narrow down 4 or 5 schools that meet that criteria. And within that short list of, let's say, 5 to 7 schools, then you can deep dive, look at websites like mbauniverse.com, and essentially look for a holistic school. There are some schools that only focus on placement, because that's what you want to hear, students want to hear. There are some schools that have actually invested in faculty. And ultimately, what you remember out of business school is only your faculty interaction, or for that matter, any education. You don't remember the physical infrastructure, you don't remember anything. You only remember 2 or 3 great teachers that took your hand and guided you through that maze. So faculty is what I will strongly urge. I know it is going against the conventional wisdom of the youth right now. They look at this very, very differently. But I very strongly believe that go to a school, all things being equal, which has got at least 5 faculty that you really want to engage with. If you get an opportunity, can you spend a day with them, talking about that area. All business schools have their websites which have got information, plenty of information about faculty. If a business school does not have information about faculty, then you know where things are. So that's my answer.
I think Amit couldn't have agreed more. I know the amount of impact Professor Singhvi has on you. Even now, when post-COVID you wanted to write an article, Singhvi sir wrote that article, and he actually, he shared that article with me even before it got published.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So people says, and that's what we only remember the faculty. So Professor S.K. Chaudhary is right now with us teaching finance, and you know that it doesn't matter, which institute you are, but what matters, you want the faculty like Professor SKC. You like a professor like, what I call S.K. Parker. So the kind of faculty you have, I think, is something which is most important. 3 important things to my mind. See, curriculum can be created. First of all, the curriculum has to be what we call new age, which has to cater to the needs of the industry. But in order to deliver the curriculum, you need the faculty. And I think schools, and it is very easy to find out which are the schools which are good in faculty. Okay. And today, that's why I said, because you talked about faculty, I can say at least in 3 areas, Amit: marketing, finance, and in digital business analytics. I think we will be up there, maybe within the top 5 or 6 schools. So you have got Amit Bagga, S.K. Chaudhary, Jitender, and Prashant Goyal all firing together in finance. S.K. Palekar, Anand Narsimha, Asit Barma, Sandeep Sharma, Suraj Kamori, and all of us together in marketing. Also, I teach, by the way. Okay. So what I'm saying is, I think the faculty plays a key role, the curriculum plays a key role, and the industry integration plays a key role. But I think Amit is the right on dot when he says we only remember the faculty, everything being equal. That's how you choose the school. And I think for those who are interested, I can say, yes, IFM Business School, as far as faculty is concerned today, is just up there. That I can say with a lot of conviction. No doubt about it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Atish and Motri, for your responses. So before we end this session, there's one last question that I see, because there are a few people who have also joined us who may not necessarily be from the MBA/business track. So what do you think is going to be the future of non-MBA professionals post-COVID-19? Any advice for them?
First to Amit, non-MBA professionals. You are not audible, Amit.
Sorry. I said thank you. Advice remains same. In any profession, routine jobs will go automated. You have to go deep. You have to study deep into a discipline, and you have to do in an area that you're passionate about. If you combine these 2 things, it's a winning combination in every discipline, in every era. You are an expert in an area that you like. That Venn diagram intersection of being an expert in the area that you're passionate about will take you very, very far. So that's my response.
Atish sir, what about you?
I am taking it forward from what just now Amit said. Okay. And it is so happening, probably, if I can see that I would like to share the screen and see, because what he said is very interesting thing. Okay. Too many things coming up, it seems. Okay. Any case, what I would like to say is there are 4 things. What I like. Second is what I would like to do. Okay. And the kind of profession that I would like to get in, depending upon my liking. Okay. Now the question is like this, that whether beyond management or MBA, is there anything? Great, you can be a great lawyer, come to the law school. You can be a great design professional, come to the design school. You can be a great what we call chartered accountant, if you want to be an accountant. Okay. You can be a great musician, go to a school of performing arts. You can be a great artist, go to a school, college of art. See, I think we need not force fit any what we call profession to us. We must understand what we like, and based on our liking we should choose the profession. Now what happens is we get straitjacketed, and I think that is where the new age universities, like what we are Amit trying in Vijayabhumi University, that you are exposed to all the schools, whether it is the performing arts, whether it is environmental sciences, whether it is law, whether it is design, whether it is music, language, science, you just find out what you are good at. I can tell you, if an individual pursues what the person is good at, the person will be doing far better than if an individual decides to do something based on peer pressure. Normally what happens, are tu doctor nahi bana, engineer nahi bana? No, you do what you want to do. Similarly, if there are a lot of time parental pressures. Now Amit said that he left a 20,000 job and decided to go for a 6,000 job because he wanted to be in the media industry. And look at what Amit has done. Correct. So it is very important that we pursue what we are good at, not come under parental pressure, not come under peer pressure. Don't follow the herd mentality and do what we are good at. And I'm happy to share that even if you suppose you get into a law program in Vijayabhumi University, Amit, okay, after 2 years you decide, no, I don't like to be in law, I want to pursue design. Because you have done courses across, you can shift to a design program. I think that switch and the shift also has to be allowed. Someone might say, okay, I want to only be a lawyer dealing in data privacy and I must do a data science also. Combination of law and data science. I think those are the future. We should come out of the mindset where we are straitjacketed, where we follow a herd mentality. We must find our own purpose, discover our passion, and follow our passion. That is what the young generation must do. Just like what Amit did.
I think, sir, that's some very sound advice coming from the both of you. And I think this brings us to the end of our session. I would also like to tell all of our attendees, we have a brand quiz which is gone live right now. And winners of this particular quiz can win vouchers up to 1,000 rupees. So make sure that you quickly do this quiz and grab those prizes. Also, at the outset, I would like to thank Mr. Agnihotri and Dr. Atish Chattopadhyay for taking out your valuable time and for being with us today and sharing your valuable inputs with all of us and all of the participants. Thank you so much to both of you. I think this was truly an enlightening session. Any parting thoughts from the both of you before we end the session?
Amit. You are unmuted. Yeah. Unmute yourself.
I said you go first, please.
I think the starting point of this conversation was, is it an opportunity? This particular situation, this is an opportunity. Somebody asked me one question, day before yesterday. Okay. Why is it that you are so busy? Okay. I said, in my 20 plus years of teaching career, if I have to identify one what we call phase where I thought I learned most and I really got most satisfaction, I think this was during this period. And by the way, I also had a talk with Professor Srikant Datar, because he was also leading the the online transition, and I shared that with Kritika, you also, and a lot of our colleagues, and we had a long chat, by the way. See, when this whole situation was happening, we were wondering, a lot of people were wondering what to do. But we thought, I personally thought, Amit, that this is going to last. So I just had a quick conversation with two of my cousins who are actually NHS doctors in UK, and another cousin sister and her husband. Both of them are actually PhDs in immunology, and one of them worked on that test that Abbott has created. Okay, so I thought that it is going to last. And how do we run a normal operation when everything people will think that is an abnormal? That's what the situation was. So how do we continue our classes with the same schedule and the same calendar? How do we continue our examination in the same manner? How do we continue our meetings and review meetings in the same manner? How do we continue to interact? How do we keep on functioning in the same manner? Now, I think that was a challenge which was emerging. And to actually work on that and make everybody convinced that, okay, 300 students, all of them said, how can you conduct an examination? Some of them said there could be privacy issues because you are doing home proctoring, because you are an AI machine proctoring and also an invigilator watching. Now I had to do a batch address. I had to do faculty meeting every alternate week. Every week we are doing faculty meeting. Now to maintain the same operations, the amount of learning that happened for an individual like me, I think that was enormous. If I have to identify an aha moment in my whole career, I think this is the aha moment. Okay. So what I want to say here is that if we are, doing what we want to do, if we have that process of, that orientation of continuous learning, then I think we will remain continuously employable, which is the mission. Our mission also says that, okay, to be a holistic, socially responsible, continuously employable professional. By having a, continuity in business, it is a business continuity case. I think we actually created so much value for the society because all the students are engaged, all the faculty are engaged, we are all engaged, which means it's tremendous satisfaction. I think to me, this is the most important learning that I have got at this phase of my career, that we need to discover ourselves, rediscover ourselves, unlearn, learn new things, and remain relevant continuously. And if as long as that happens, I think employability is never a challenge. And lastly, but most importantly, we should withhold and stick to the values that we stand for. It is the values which determine us. There is no, there is no substitute of inculcating the right values. I think as long as the values are in place, the learning orientation is in place, employability can never be a question mark. That is my take on it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Atish. Any parting comments from you, Mr. Agnihotri? So I think you're on mute. We're unable to hear you.
Okay, so the word crisis in Chinese, as we know, has got two parts. One of them is opportunity, the other is chaos. It's up to us to see it as a glass half full or glass half empty. I agree with Dr. Atish. I have never been so busy than what I have been in the last 45 days. From 8 o'clock in the morning till 7:38 in the evening. And this is giving us a great opportunity to reflect on what we really need to do. In our daily life, we are all caught up with so many things. Now there is no travel. There is so much of, there are so many distractions. So I will urge students to use this as a great opportunity, see this crisis as an opportunity, and take the plunge into higher education. India has weathered this much better than anybody anywhere else. I think we will all be saluting The world will be all recognizing and saluting what India has done through a very strong lockdown, what our Prime Minister has done, and we will come out very strong. Don't delay your decisions, bring clarity in your thoughts, and go for it. Be ready. This is a lifetime opportunity. So don't miss this opportunity. That's what I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Atish. Thank you so much, Amit sir, for your time. I think these were truly very valuable inputs from the both of you. It was truly a pleasure for me to be able to interview both of you and get your insightful perspectives on this pandemic and how fresh graduates should be tackling with this entire situation. Thank you so much to all our attendees for attending the session. We hope you found it enjoyable and informative at the same time. And I hope many of you are attempting the brand quiz, as there are exciting prizes waiting to be won. Thank you so much, everyone. Stay safe, stay indoors, and keep tuned to View TV for more interesting sessions coming your way. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Kritika. Thank you, Amit. Stay safe, take care. All the best to all of you. Thank you so much. Great pleasure.